Hi, everybody, and welcome back to On the DL. This is a special episode for all women, every woman, and men. If you are listening and or watching, you need this for education. Okay, let me just start right there. I want to introduce our guest, Shirley Weir. Thank you, Shirley, for coming on the DL.
I'm so looking forward to it. Thank you.
So am I, because we are going to be talking all women for the next little while. I think people are going to say, well, who's Shirley? And if you know anything about Menopause Chicks, which is an online community, which I came across, then you know who Shirley is. Shirley is a fierce advocate for women's health. These are her words, not mine. She teaches vagina owners about hormone health and how to be their best health advocates. You got me on that line.
All right.
It's like you had me at hello. I am all yours right now. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I'll read our bio?
Yeah, absolutely. So I never intended to grow up to be a menopause chick, but this work somehow found me, and I can't imagine doing anything else. Women are starving for quality health information. And so, what we do at Menopause Chicks is to empower women to find that quality information, get as informed as they possibly can, learn sometimes for the first time about their hormone health and their vaginal health, and then choose the journey that's right for them. And my journey started, oh gosh, I'm 54. 14 years ago, I started experiencing things that I knew nothing about. And
Right.
when I went to Dr. Google, I was really disappointed. And I was also disappointed in, talking with other resources, like even my doctor, who I absolutely love, but it wasn't a positive experience. And so I just really felt that the online world was missing a community for us.
Okay, I want to talk about the online community in a moment, but I want to
Sure.
read a little bit of your bio so everybody understands. I just want to preface by saying that yes, I was doing research, and both for On the DL and also for myself, because I always pick topics selfishly,
Yeah.
things that interest me. And menopause, perimenopause absolutely interests me. And I came across Menopause Chicks, and I was just, I was hooked. This is a site and a place I go to regularly for
Yeah.
information and for support, and to um, listen and learn from other women. So I urge everyone, as they listen to this podcast, they get off and they go to Menopause Chicks. But I'm going to read about Shirley first. So Shirley introduces herself as a menopause chick, now 54, as you just told us. Her perimenopause journey began in her early 40s. Sore boobs, sleep deprivation, depression, and brain fog led Shirley to her doctor's office, the bookstore, and Dr. Google, but she was left feeling confused, overwhelmed, and alone. At 46, Shirley launched Menopause Chicks onto the world stage to empower women to talk openly about perimenopause and menopause, to navigate midlife health information, and to connect to women's health professionals. Menopause Chicks is a popular online community. Last year, the group generated over 2 million site visits. Shirley is also a TEDx speaker and a best-selling author of Mokita, How to Navigate Perimenopause and Confidence and Ease. Shirley holds a certificate in peer counseling from the University of British Columbia. She's a mom to 2 young adults and 1 golden doodle. Wow, we've got a lot in common, Shirley.
Oh, is that right? Do you have a golden doodle?
I have a golden.
Awesome.
I have a
Awesome.
golden and another boy, because my house is filled with boys,
Boys.
teenage boys. Yes, it's boys, boys, boys. So they don't really. It's a whole other hormonal shift going on. But I have very little support in my home in
Mm,
terms of estrogen.
yeah.
Right. So there's no women. It's all
Yeah.
boys. Um, so tell me a little bit about what that was like for you when you had started perimenopause and your body started to change. So you were talked about sore boobs, depression, and brain fog.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I start these conversations, it kind of makes us think, oh, this is a bucket. This is the perimenopause bucket, and I can just talk about some of the physical changes that were happening, or mental or emotional. But really, what I've learned, and maybe hindsight is always 2020, is that it's like a Rubik's cube. Like there's all these things that were overlapping. So for me, I was running a business. I had two small children. I had my aging mother living with me who was showing signs of dementia.
Mm,
And I was waking up every morning at 3 a.m. I was feeling anxious and
mhm.
depressed for the first time in my life. I was experiencing PMS for the first time in my life. Like these were all really brand new experiences. And I really wanted to point the finger at something. I wanted to blame something and then attack it, right? And like, as all of us are smart and savvy, find a solution. And I wanted to blame perimenopause. And now when I look back at it, yeah, I was experiencing hormone fluctuations, and I was also burning the midnight oil. I was, working hard, hitting that brick wall and running right through it. My stress and cortisol is our stress hormone, it was
Yeah.
off the charts. And so, if there's anything, if you're like, you're only going to listen to this conversation for a few seconds, it's, put yourself at the top of the to-do list. We have to take care of ourselves. Otherwise, we have sort of this domino effect that can impact hormone health. It can also impact our heart and our brain and our bones,
You're making me
right?
want to cry.
I know.
Like, I feel like crying right now.
Okay,
Because
sorry.
no, it's all good because, as women, it's so interesting that we hit a stage in an age where I don't know, I don't know if you grew up this way, but you were sort of, I felt like you get to a certain age and stage and things start to slow down a little bit and you're not so stressed out so much and things start to level off. But holy shit, was that wrong? So, like, mid 40s comes and talk about the midnight oil, talk about waking up at 3 o'clock every morning. Like, what is wrong with me? That is what is going through so many women's minds. And they're thinking, nobody's talking to me about perimenopause.
Yeah.
No one's telling me that my hormones are all over the place. And this is a huge problem because we do love our doctors and we love our OBGYNs and we love to, we love them, but why are they not speaking to us about this stage in our lives? This is just as important as the baby making years, if not more important.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's a big question. So I'll try to lay the groundwork a little bit. It's sometimes helpful to talk about definitions. So
Yeah.
menopause is one day. Menopause is like a birthday or an anniversary. It's the 12-month anniversary of your final period. And if we back up, let's say 50 or 100 years, what our medical community, which was our primary source of health information, knew about menopause was that if you weren't 50 yet, it wasn't a conversation that needed
Hmm.
to be had. Fast forward now, perimenopause starting to become a more popular word in our society and our culture, but it was only coined, Dana, in 1996. It's a
What?
really new word. And many of our healthcare professionals, okay, this is a two-pronged comment. Many of our health professionals were educated before 1996. I know mine
Yeah.
was. But secondly, perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, hormone balance are not taught in medical school. I know because I know members of the faculty at the medical school at the University of British Columbia, and they get 1 hour to talk about women's midlife health. So what we've done, global we, is we've set up a society where we continue to send women to the hardware store to get milk, right? We continue to send women to their doctor, asking their doctors to support them with something that they have not been trained in. And
Okay,
that
that
has
is so
created,
upsetting.
that is really upsetting, but I'm trying to answer your question about why no one has talked to us about this, right?
Right.
And then there's other
Yeah.
layers, right? There's, we don't actually have a health care system. We have a sick care system. And I love doctors. I work with so many of them, and they're expected to know so many things about so vast array of health conditions. Perimenopause is not a health condition. It's not an ailment or a disease. And that's why in my bio, I had a difficult time finding the books at the bookstore on menopause, because they were listed underneath a sign that said ailments and disorders. And I wasn't going there to buy to find a book on menopause. So it's very nuanced. It's the medical community, it's media, it's marketers putting menopause on products, on labels, thinking that they've found the golden ticket to our wallets. And there's a huge gap in understanding, huge gap in research. Less than 10% of all research dollars goes towards women's health. So you can
Yes.
imagine in that very tiny piece of the research dollar pie where menopause sits, right? It's really small.
And this is another a point I want to talk about, because I think it's very important, particularly women who are in their late 40s, early 50s, or sort of in that heart, that sweet spot of perimenopause, menopause.
Yeah.
I can speak for myself and for my close friends and my sisters who have been through it. We talk about marketing, and we talk about women at that stage, in this stage of life, and it is not sexy.
Yeah.
It's not sexy.
The
So
word brings a lot of negative energy, actually.
it's weird that if you speak to some women, I myself included, I talk about this stage of life where when I say I feel sexy, or I feel good, or I have good days, I have bad days, and sure, I wake up sometimes in the middle of the night, and sure, my boobs hurt too, but I sometimes I feel really, really good. And it would be nice to talk about
Yes.
that as well. Don't you agree?
I so agree. You probably won't be surprised to find out that I get quite a bit of pushback and flack from women when I try to present the positive sides of
Really?
aging. I do. Women who are suffering, I mean, we have to meet women where they are, and there are a
Yeah.
lot of women who are suffering in silence.
Yes.
So the last thing that I want to do to speak with a member of my community who is really having a tough time is to say, oh yes, but aren't you more confident, or don't you love having sex without worrying about birth control, or here's all these benefits. I can't have that conversation without first addressing where she is, helping her find the journey that's going to get her. She deserves to feel amazing, but sometimes the path to amazing runs straight through not yet amazing.
Yes, and it takes,
Right.
like you said, it's a journey. It can take years until you get to the other side, and
Yeah.
what you go through during that time can be very unsexy and very hard, and um, very lonely.
Well, one of the things we
Really lonely.
probably totally lonely. I mean, you are not alone is the phrase I use the most.
Really?
Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
Women who are experiencing like heavy bleeding is one
Hmm.
of the most common experiences of perimenopause.
So
And
gross.
every woman who experiences heavy bleeding
Yeah.
thinks either A, she's dying of cancer, or B, she must be the only one. And then you can relate that that feeling, that brain fog, not the
Yeah.
words not coming to me right now, but that she applies that to whether she's leaking urine, or she no longer has libido, or she's waking up in the middle of the night, or she has hot flashes. Like all of those things, they're not water cooler talk yet. Women don't get up in the morning and say, oh, hey, Dana, guess what? Now when I cough, laugh, and sneeze, I leak urine. Like we just don't have
Okay,
those
well, here's the
conversations
thing. This
with
is
each
what I'm going
other.
to say, Shirley. So this is why I wanted this conversation on the DL, because we talk about things on this podcast that people are not talking about out loud. And this needs to be talked about out loud because it's normal. It's part of life. It is being a woman. And we need to celebrate all stages of womanhood. And this is a massive stage for women. And yes, some of it sucks, but we need to talk about it as much as possible. And that's why I love Menopause Chicks so much. Tell me, in your experience, what women are coming to the table with the most on your platform. What are they saying?
I can definitely do that. But I need to start out by saying that culture will often conjure up negative connotations whenever the words perimenopause, menopause, or postmenopause are spoken. The reality is that you are not meant to suffer. It's not a foregone conclusion. 20% of women will have their worlds rocked upside down by hormone fluctuations in perimenopause. 20% will sail through. And then there's 60% of us in the middle, which I include myself in, where we experience mild to moderate changes and or we choose to do something about it. So we address the root cause, whether that's, you know, lifestyle. For me, I had to pay attention to my lifestyle. I had to like really focus for the first time in my life. How am I eating, moving, sleeping, and managing stress? I had to address the fact that I was low in iron because the symptoms of iron deficiency can mimic the symptoms of hormone imbalance. I had to start taking magnesium. I had my thyroid checked. And eventually, as I got to like age 48, I chose hormone therapy. So it's really important that like we don't say perimenopause or menopause and think, oh, and here's the list of umpteen symptoms that you are going to experience, because that's simply not true. And those women who are kind of listening to this podcast and getting ahead of the curve have an advantage. So that they don't have to go through that brick wall that I was talking about. The most common topics, it's a very long list. We just completed a survey. And
I took it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
The results really hadn't changed in 5 years. Irregular bleeding and heavy bleeding is one of the most common concerns in perimenopause. One of the most common concern for women post-menopause is vaginal dryness. And you mentioned how, you know, no one talks to us about this. And then I talk about the statistics of women who sail through perimenopause. This is a really important conversation for the DL, because many women will be like, oh, you know what, Shirley, I'm fine. No, I got this. I sailed through without any problem. And then 4 years later, they're calling me and saying, I can't believe that I'm experiencing vaginal dryness. No one told them the importance of estrogen and how our vaginas love estrogen. And no one told them that hyaluronic acid is going to be depleted and that everything, you know, kind of goes for that deep dive post-menopause. So they were feeling really proud of how they were taking care of themselves. And then again, got slammed with a surprise.
Because they didn't have the conversation
Yeah.
with someone, or they just didn't know what was happening.
Yeah, or the education. Like one of the analogies that I like to use is, and I know we both have kids, right? So I put both of my kids in driving lessons. I didn't have to, you know, they could have gone and got their license without taking driver's ed. You can navigate perimenopause to menopause without taking any education or reading a book or attending a workshop, but it's so much better if you do.
Oh,
Right?
I love that.
It's just one of those things that if you can spend an hour or a couple of hours getting as informed as you possibly can, I guarantee you, you will feel better. You'll be more confident. You will have a better, more informed experience at your healthcare appointment, whoever you choose as, you know, to be on your health team. Showing up and ensuring that they don't have to start from ground zero and give you the 101 on your hormone health, that's really advantageous. And besides, most of us know that our doctor's appointments are 10 to 15 minutes long.
Oh, yes.
So
yeah.
It's better to be informed and have your list of questions prepared. And then you can kind of be in the know. I hope that you'll take that information and share it with your girlfriends, your sisters, your book club, the girls at work, right? So you can become an advocate and pay it forward.
I have started talking about this a lot. pardon me, out loud, because I think it's so important. And what do you think it says? 37,000 members.
Well, one of the things that it,
Pardon me. Sorry, I
that's
have a little
okay.
cough.
No, I know.
Go ahead.
One of the things that it says, it said to me, certainly when I went online looking for how to validate quality information, was, we have a huge gap in quality conversations around health, period. Mm-hmm. We know that it's really been underscored the last couple of years. And then a real huge gap when it comes to women's health and bringing these conversations, not just out of the closet, but learning to be proactive. So another analogy I use all the time in the Menopause Chicks community, and like we're talking to smart, savvy women, like all of us are educated. We know how to renovate our house and just do anything in the world.
Raise children.
Right. Yeah. But, if you had a leak in your roof, like you would jump on that. You'd be like, this is my biggest asset. I need to protect it. I'm going to get the repair guy here. I'm going to invest in a new roof because that investment will pay off dividends. We don't provide that same education when it comes to our bodies and to our health. I have an RSP account, but I didn't have a health account. I didn't realize that I was going to be spending X amount of money investing in my midlife health. So it's a bit of a paradigm shift. And I know sometimes I go to the 30,000 foot, but I'm like, there's got to be a way for the next generation to get ahead of this.
Yeah. And we need to bring it out in the open. I've had my own, I've talked about this on the DL several times. Just last week, 2 weeks ago, I had a guest on and we were talking about breast health and breast cancer. And I had said that, you get to a stage in your life where she's much younger than I am, but that there is this stereotype for women that somehow we reach our midlife and our boobs are going to fall off and our vaginas are going to melt.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of, okay. And everything falls into that category. So you can't be beautiful. You can't feel well. You can't have great sex. You can't have wonderful relationships or new relationships. You can't create and motivate and inspire because all of this stuff is happening inside. And I say that's just such crap. Yeah, my boobs didn't fall off. Like they're still here. Yeah, okay, they're sagging a little, but they're still here. And that's what gets me so upset because I feel like this stereotype also pushes women into silence and they don't want to reach out for help and they don't want to say I'm bleeding or I have my 5th urinary tract infection in 3 months and or I'm not feeling well in the middle of the night, so I'm having anxiety in the so it pushes women into this corner and into this sort of wall, like you just said, that brick wall, and then we become silent, and I hate that. I hate that so much.
I do too. I mean, I have an 18-year-old daughter. I really need to make sure that she's talking openly about any changes to her health as well. So it's really important to talk about it. And I am not saying that everyone listening to this conversation needs to get a sandwich board and, become the poster child for menopause. I'm happy to do that on our behalf. But we do need to make our own checklist and take care of ourselves and then have the conversation with our mothers, our sisters, our daughters at the very least, right?
Yeah, I talk to my sisters about it a lot. I have 2 older sisters. We talk about it a lot. We all have similar situations. So we do talk about our bodies, which is great for me that I have sisters and I have friends that I'm very open with. But it's interesting that you have this, I was perusing and I'm going through the website and there's various posts that you had. And each time I'm reading something, oh my God, that's it. That's what that is. Nobody told me that's what that is. And so I'm hoping that people that are listening to this will go to Menopause Chicks and have that same experience, and feel that support. I bring up UTIs because
Yeah.
not ever having any, I've never had that before in my life. And now starting, like, what is that? I'm like, what? That's post menopause?
Yeah, I didn't
What
know.
is it?
I've never experienced a UTI either, and I'm just in the midst of learning about it this
Me
week, as a
too.
matter of
Yeah.
fact. But
Mm-hmm.
the key takeaway is, vaginal health needs prioritization. The vagina loves estrogen. As estrogen declines, it goes for a steep decline. It's usually high. Generally speaking, it's high in perimenopause, and then it goes for a deep decline post-menopause. That can lead to UTIs, it can lead to vaginal dryness and vulva dryness, as I mentioned, and it is not very helpful in incontinence, supporting incontinence.
So what do you do? What do you tell people to do?
Well, there's many options. So, one of the first options is, if you're not experiencing pain, to have lots of sex and orgasms, because that energy really supports natural lubrication and the natural health. Second thing is to practice regular pelvic floor exercises and see a pelvic floor physiotherapist. Very proactive step that you can take. Localized estrogen therapy used to be the go-to, and still is for many women. So that's estrogen, usually in a cream or a ring, that you apply directly to the vagina. Doesn't pass through the liver, very little enters the bloodstream. It's super effective. However, it can take 3 to 4 months to show results. And this was something that I've learned from my members. And so they asked for something else. And so we went to one of our pharmaceutical partners, and they compounded a hyaluronic acid vaginal moisturizer. So we all moisturize our face and our hands and our elbows and our feet.
Yes.
And we need to moisturize our vagina and our vulva once, hyaluronic acid and estrogen starts to decline.
Really?
Really?
Wow. I just learned something new. Here's a fun story. This is not something that happened to me. This is just a story that I know. If it was me, I own it, and I talk about myself on my own podcast. But a woman went to her doctor. She was experiencing all kinds of stuff going on with her vagina. She's in her early 50s, and her doctor basically said, you could use Crisco. Do you remember Crisco?
No. Yeah.
Do you remember that stuff that our mums and grandmoms used to use to bake with?
Yeah.
Or coconut oil.
Yeah.
Now, coconut oil doesn't offend me as much as Crisco, because I wouldn't ingest that. I wouldn't even bake with that. And never mind put that in my vagina. But so coconut oil seems to be the go-to lubricant, make your vagina feel better remedy right now. Is that right or wrong?
Here's a lesson. There's a difference between a moisturizer and a lubricant. So no food oils have been tested on the vagina. There's no research. Coconut oil does get mentioned quite often, but it's a lubricant. And what do lubricants do? They prevent friction. They provide a barrier to friction. You put it in your frying pan, your food doesn't stick. You use it as a lubricant, it prevents friction. That does not invest in your skin health. You need a moisturizer to do that. Think of your face. You could put baby oil on your face, and that would prevent something from sticking to it, but you probably wouldn't do that. You would want to use a moisturizer that's going to be an investment, make your skin feel healthy all day or all week, whatever the product is. So you need to use a moisturizer, and then for sex, pleasure, fun, use a lubricant as well. And make sure that you're using a lubricant that won't alter the pH of your vagina, especially in postmenopause, because you're more susceptible to, as we mentioned, UTIs, and you want to just keep the area as healthy as possible.
And where would you find these moisturizers?
Well, so the one that we compounded at Menopause Chicks, you can get at moisturizeyourvagina.com. So this is just compounded by at the central pharmacy with our partner Pure Pharmacy.
And you just go to your website to find it, or
yeah,
is there
you
another
can,
website?
yeah, the link is on at purepharmacy.com/menopause chicks.
Okay, I'll put that
And
up.
there's a moisturizer, and right beside it is the lubricant that I use. It's made by Good Clean Love. And the reason I chose it is I'm lazy. Lubricant manufacturers do not have to disclose the pH level on their packaging.
Mm.
So you could be buying a lubricant that could drastically alter the natural pH of the vagina is 4 to 5. And you could be using something, especially the warming lubricants, you know, the ones that like give you a tingle or warm, they're the worst. So
no,
don't do that. Yeah. And then it takes longer for, I mean, your vagina pH may correct itself, but it will take longer for it to go back to what is
just when you find something great, you know, Shirley, like you find something fun and great, and then now you're telling me that's going to throw off the pH balance in my vagina.
Well, the worst culprits, I have to say, are some of the brands that have the biggest marketing budgets. That makes me really sad. And then one of the other worst culprits are the warming products, like any lubricant that that adds that.
Damn.
Sorry.
It's okay. Well, you told me that. I mean,
but the good news, yeah.
What's the good news?
Well, the good news is that if you're moisturizing your vagina on a regular basis with hyaluronic acid is a super strong molecule, and our body makes it on its own until like our 30s or 40s, it starts to decline, but it restores the natural moisture back into the cells of the vulva and the vaginal wall. So you're going to feel like you used to naturally.
And okay, here's a personal question. How do you apply moisturizer to your vagina, or do you use it in sex play?
2 ways. I use, it's not for sex. This is like part of
Can you though? Can you have your partner apply it?
Well, you can, but I would prefer if you're investing in a moisturizer that you use it in the morning when you brush your teeth and then moisturize your vagina, because you want it to work. Right. And then use a lubricant with your partner or for pleasure and self-pleasure or fun. I use my finger. So it's a gel. It's a little sticky. And the reason that it's sticky is because you want it to stay where you put it. Right. So you can insert this and also apply it externally too. And it's amazing. Hyaluronic acid is absolutely the best.
Hyaluronic acid for your vagina. I mean, this is groundbreaking.
Yeah. So hyaluronic acid starts to decline in our 30s and 40s and then significantly post-menopause. So that's why you've seen it since 2008. You've probably seen it in beauty and skincare products.
Yep, all over my face. Yep.
Right. So if you look at the ingredients on your facial moisturizer, hyaluronic acid might be like 6th or 7th or 8th on the list. This moisturizer is only hyaluronic acid. Like there's no preservatives, water, anything added.
Do you put this moisturizer, you're saying in the morning, so do you put it on after a shower? Like you don't want to wash it off, right? You want it on.
I would put it on, like I put it on and get dressed right away. So you don't
have to, lasts all day.
You don't have to lay down, or you could do it at night. But it just really depends. Some women use it 2 to 3 times when they first get it, and then they know that they can taper off and only use it once a day or every other day.
Okay, so this is very, very helpful. And then what about, okay, here's another one that was also someone had told me about. Their doctor told them not to use soap.
Yeah. So the vagina is a self-cleaning oven. You don't need soap, just water.
For reals?
For real.
I don't know if I could do that. I'm going to be honest. I don't know if I could do it.
Then I'm not an expert, but make sure that you're choosing a cleaning product that won't alter the pH of your vagina.
Okay, so women need to hear that, because there are probably a lot of women out there like me who can't give up their soap. And so their pH balance might be off now. And maybe that's all it is a little tweak. right?
Yeah.
Maybe there's
And
not so much going on. Maybe it's just tweaking.
well, and generally speaking, we're not cleaning our vagina, the internal vessel,
Right.
right? We're
Right.
so there's a great Instagram account called hello.vulva, hello
Mm-hmm.
vulva. And I can reshare some of their information today just to make sure that everybody's kind of crystal clear on what products they should use or should not use
Okay.
for their vulva and vagina. But it is a
Okay.
self-cleaning oven.
Okay, that's two sources now. So I just wanted to put that out there. I also saw that you talk a lot about a product that people can take proactively for UTIs.
Mhm.
About cranberry, the
Yeah,
cranberry
so
source.
so I'm learning about Utiva, who has a product that's actually the equivalent of 9 cranberry pills. So it's very effective at
God.
proactively preventing UTIs. And
Hmm.
oh my gosh, I forget the number, but it's like in the millions, the number of doctor visits that are for the treatment of UTIs and the prescriptions for antibiotics that are being handed out to women. If we can just, as I mentioned, get in front of that and prevent all of that inconvenience,
Hmm.
all of those prescriptions, all of those, even relationships that might be breaking down because chronic UTIs, right, are getting in the way of, having really great relationships. So,
Of course. I mean, who wants to have sex when you have UTI symptoms?
well, who wants to have
No
sex,
one.
but you're not feeling yourself? I mean, just
No, it
yesterday I was
hurts.
talking with a couple of members in my community who are both registered nurses. They work in the emergency room, and we were talking about how UTI symptoms can show up like delirium or dementia. Mm-hmm.
What?
Yes. So if and I have a sneaky suspicion that that happened to my mother. She passed away. But
Mm.
signs of dementia aren't always dementia.
That I know, but UTIs?
UTI can be one of the root causes, and
Sorry.
it's
Go
an
ahead. Sorry.
easy test,
Is a
right?
what?
It's an easy test. It's something that easily tested for. So don't ignore the signs and symptoms of UTIs.
No, of course not. Never. Yeah, and that also UTIs they hurt.
Yeah.
They're very, very painful. So
Painful.
there's a
It's
difference between
uncomfortable.
yeast infections and
Yes.
UTIs, and women have to educate themselves that no, it's probably not another yeast infection. It's probably a UTI, and perhaps maybe you don't even have a UTI. Perhaps it's your pH balance,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like education,
Yeah.
speaking to people. This is right. Fingers crossed. We need
Well,
to do
no, I
this.
mean, this isn't a health strategy. And I
Oh,
know
I see. Oh, I see.
we're all guilty of it. We're all guilty of crossing our fingers and hoping for the best. I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that I am not one of the heart disease statistics, one of the osteoporosis statistics, although there's a high likelihood I might be, right? But
Hmm.
we can't always rely on crossing our fingers. We've got to take this opportunity. And that's why I think, one of the benefits of the perimenopause to menopause journey is that it puts women at this window of opportunity. It's this
Hmm.
opportunity to be like, oh, I've got 50 more years on this planet. What do I want my next 50 years to look like?
And feel
Well,
like.
and feel like, right? So I'm going to take ownership of it.
I love that so much, Shirley, because if we haven't done it thus far, start now.
Yeah, what? It's
Start at
never
this
too
stage in
early
your life.
and it's never too late. Never too late. It's
No, I
never
agree.
too late.
I just keep hearing of women suffering and blaming so many other things. Post COVID, long COVID, brain fog, anxiety. Okay, you may have all of that, but the likelihood that you are in the throes of perimenopause is very likely if you're at a certain stage.
It's so true. And it's extremely large, this opportunity that we have, because heart disease is the number one killer of women. It's the number one cause of premature death in women. The heart loves estrogen. If for no other reason, learn about supporting estrogen and progesterone so that you don't become, or if there's anything that you can do to get in front of becoming a statistic of dementia, right? or heart disease or osteoporosis.
Before I let you go, I do want to just touch on that really quickly because I think that's a very important point for women to understand, because we didn't talk about heart disease and the link to estrogen. There is, I know there is a backlash against hormone replacement therapy.
Used to be.
I agree. Used to be, with education, thank goodness,
Uninformed,
and
yeah.
communication, women are understanding that the effects on breast cancer and where those studies came from. So I think it's really important if you could just talk about really how important estrogen is and why we need it when we're not producing it ourselves.
Sure. So I can answer that question by saying on my very first day of research, I thought I had a new notebook, I had a pen, I was going to go to this workshop and learn everything I possibly could about estrogen and progesterone. Progesterone is equally important as estrogen. And the doctor, Dr. Balpawa, she's actually a co-author of my book, as the fast forward, great story, but she stood up and said, at the turn of the last century, women lived to be 50. It's true, right? You had your babies when you were 19 to 29 and you died at 50. 58 was a really old woman 100 years ago. And now we expect to live to be 100, but evolution hasn't caught up. The average age of menopause in North America is 51.2. So we reach menopause and we might adopt some of the societal messages that say, oh, great, you don't have a period anymore. Oh, great, you don't have to worry about birth control anymore. However, we haven't yet adopted the message that says, how are you now going to invest in your body for the next 3 to 5 decades? Because your heart, your brain, your bones, and your vagina has been relying on that perfect balance of estrogen and progesterone that's been happening for the last 40 years. Estrogen is the first 2 weeks of a regular cycle. Progesterone comes in and it's this perfect dance partner. And then those levels either decline, fluctuate, dissipate, and we end up as we don't have to look any further than a retirement community that's full of women who are experiencing heart disease, dementia, osteoporosis, and the big one, Dana, incontinence. There's
Really? Because of lack of estrogen?
Well, incontinence because of lack of estrogen, absolutely. We have to keep the vagina and the pelvic floor healthy to avoid incontinence and practice pelvic floor exercises and some of those other points that I mentioned before. But, it's a $16 billion industry of paper and disposable incontinence products that's projected by 2025.
Wow.
And I don't know about you, but I've got other plans and how I want to spend my money. Like, I just don't want to spend my money on that. Thank you.
Yeah, I spent my hundreds of thousands of dollars on tampons and period related products over the years. I'm not interested in wearing an adult diaper. That's just not going to happen.
And we can laugh. I mean, we can laugh and say, oh yeah.
No, we can laugh and hold our pee.
Right. Yeah. But heart disease and dementia and osteoporosis, I mean, the cost of breaking a bone, the cost of a woman falling and breaking her hip we can't even point to how much that costs. If you think about, now you need care, now you need your children are impacted, your adult children are looking after you. And what happens to women when we break bones at a certain age is that it can then impact brain decline.
Of course.
And now you're dealing with 2 conditions instead of just one. So anyway, that is my answer to why we need to learn about the importance of estrogen and progesterone today, now.
I'm so happy.
Whatever age you're at right now.
I'm so happy you talked about that, because there's there really has been, and I'm glad that there is a turn now with talking about estrogen and how important it is and why we need to put it back in when we aren't producing it ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a wonderful. Shirley, thank you so much for coming on the DL and being so open and candid and talk about your own personal journey and why you started Menopause Chicks. I want you to tell everybody how they can find you and how they can find Menopause Chicks.
Absolutely. So I spend most of my time in a private online community. It's on Facebook. The URL is menopausechickscommunity.com. And I'm at Menopause Chicks on social media. And reach out to me if you have any questions, because I love to work with women in groups or one-on-one. It's about moving this conversation forward. So gratitude to you for inviting me on your podcast.
And back at you. Thank you so much for all of this. It's been enlightening and educating. And I believe we certainly are going to help several women when they listen to this.
Awesome.
Thank you, Shirley. Be
Thank
well. Feel
you.
good.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.